Hello and welcome to the Game Football Podcast from The Times. Finding a way to win. Turns out it's not just Real Madrid who can pull that trick in the Champions League. Arsenal are through to the semi-finals of the competition, and what a way to win. 5-1 on aggregate against the holders. Mikel Arteta's side will face Paris Saint-Germain in the next round after the French side survived a thrilling second leg against Aston Villa. And on today's show, we'll also discuss the European places next season as Newcastle move up to third. I'm Tom Clark, and I'm joined by the chief correspondent for The Times and Sunday Times, Martin Samuel, who has just flown in from Madrid, and the former footballer turned journalist Gregor Robson, who had the pleasure of being at Villa Park on Tuesday. Perfect team. There's my intro. Away you go, lads. Off you go. One half each. Come on, Martin, you can do it.
I can do it.
You can do
I
it.
can do it.
No coffees, straight in,
Yeah.
up at the crack of dawn, flies back in, straight into the studio. Almost as much commitment as those Arsenal defenders working hard last night in the Bernabeu.
Yeah.
Your initial reaction, your initial thoughts on the game. Arsenal more than deserved winners, and obviously that 5-1 scoreline, incredibly impressive against this Madrid side.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought it was a fantastic performance, and it it's not the statement win of beating Real Madrid 3-0 at home, but at the same time, it's a real coming of age performance, and I know that's a sort of quite overused in many ways, but what that showed a resilience that people weren't sure that they had. I mean, I was travelling out, a lot of Arsenal fans on the plane, one of whom an old friend, that a gentleman who used to write a column for this newspaper, Alan Davis, the comedian. So we were chatting away and everything. He was as nervous as a kitten because he's sitting there going, we're going to get someone. I'm sure someone there'll be a red card
the red
or
card,
whatever.
panicking.
He's looking at Arsenal WhatsApp groups, and everyone's like the conspiracy theories about the referee, of which there were none. By the way, there were no conspiracy. They were trying to find conspiratorial reasons why the referee could let them down, but there weren't any. He's got a very, very strong record of letting the game flow and not being too
as he proved prepared to stand up to Real Madrid.
Absolutely fantastic in the Bernabeu. They could not have hoped for a better official. But all of that is the periphery. It's the performance, and they were really good. I thought they defended really well, and enormous credit to Arteta. I think for this, for one thing in particular, identifying Mourinho as the guy that could fill in when they didn't have a striker, I think is a masterstroke. Yeah. Because you think of the players that they've got at the club, Raheem Sterling and Trossard or whatever. He's got a guy from midfield who never played there before, who by his own admission, the first time he played there, said, I was looking around me and I was thinking, where is everybody? Where are all my mates? Because he's playing. He's a midfielder. He's used to being surrounded by his own teammates. Suddenly you're up there on your own. He said, I was looking around and thinking, where's the other lot? Where are they? Where are they standing? Because suddenly they're in different positions to. And Arteta identified that, and I mean, it's unfortunate what's happened in the league. I do think they should have finished and won Liverpool a little bit closer, even with the injuries. But what they did have terrible bad luck, and I thought that was a masterstroke. I thought, once the injury to Gabriel, and everyone thought the back two would be vulnerable.
Do you think there's a trade-off? We're going to mention looking at the weekend and Liverpool potentially winning the league this weekend. Arsenal are now in the Champions League semi-final. Are we in a either-or type scenario where you've got the two best teams in the Premier League? One's going for the biggest European trophy. One of them's going to walk the league title.
Without a doubt, I think there's a trade-off. If you look at Arsenal in the last few games, I think they've dropped 11 points out of 21 in the last few games against teams that aren't that great. Yeah, really.
And obviously made changes against Everton
and so there has been a trade-off. And I do think it's unfortunate because I know it seems like a tall order, but if you put those 11 points back on, they're 2 points behind Liverpool, and they've got to go to Anfield, and what might have been. But that's I wrote a column about that, about us always wanting more, in the week, about Roy and even about Liverpool, where people are now disappointed it's not the quadruple. So we can't ask for everything. They're in the semi-final. They're against PSG. There would have been a time when a team as good as PSG would have been looking at Arsenal and thinking, yeah, this is the draw we wanted. Right. This is the team that's a little bit fragile, that doesn't really. No one's going to be looking at Arsenal and seeing fragility now. They're really not. Particularly
on that point, fragility and the defending, as you mentioned, Gregor, that is part of what's so impressive about this win against Madrid, isn't it? It's not just scoring 5 goals over 2 legs, it's also restricting them to one, and that one basically coming about from one individual error. Yeah. One lapse in concentration. Otherwise, absolutely fantastic. I thought Kirior, as much as Rice steals the show, and we'll come on to him in a minute, I thought Kirior over the 2 legs was excellent.
Yeah. Outstanding, yeah, and probably surprised quite a few. I think that there was a bit of fear about them.
Well, when Martin said with Gabriel's injured now, it's all falling apart for Arsenal.
Well, I think Saliba kind of took up the leadership role alongside him a bit, and there were moments of it, sort of that moment where Mbappe turned in the box in the first half too, and he did that little jink that usually just takes everyone out of the game, and Saliba just got across him. He's outstanding in those 1v1. So, and that mistake was like a wow moment. How did that come from?
What's he done there?
But I think it was just a really, really confident performance. And that sounds quite a simple thing to say, but all the build up and everyone. Maybe you should be confident at 3-0, but not against Real Madrid, and everyone knows.
Well, no, as Martin said, most Arsenal fans I knew were absolutely terrified. Terrified of an early goal.
Yeah, and there must have been an element of fear about the Arsenal players. And then after missing the penalty, that's like, you thought, crikey, that's a moment. And Arteta referenced that afterwards. That's a moment with you feared what that would do to the emotion of the game and the team.
Without a doubt.
And again, they responded to that. Got a little bit of fortune maybe with the penalty. It wasn't a penalty, but for them to turn over.
Seen them given, seen them
given, but also not seen them overturned. My goodness,
not in the Bernabeu.
No, not in the Bernabeu.
So, but then so confident team performance, but confident individual performance as well. Lewis Skelly, again, my God.
I know. I felt like I was talking with Tom Allnutt before this game about players that had played in this kind of game. Declan Rice and Bukayo Saka have played at the very biggest games for England, but Lewis Skelly, each juncture, just keeps swaggering about the pitch. Absolutely fantastic.
Arteta was saying this is the first time I've been here. How old is he?
And absolutely.
So he stepped in his first season in football, and he's like, again, he just gets the ball and he backs himself to hold off anyone. He was fouled felt like half a dozen times in the first half. Just like stepping into those little midfield positions, holding someone off, trying to drive through, kind of break the lines with the ball at his feet as opposed to a pass, and always being brought down. And Jude Bellingham was getting pissed off with him again because he kind of kept buying fouls. Those sort of midfield attributes are so valuable when Arsenal play the way they play.
Yeah. Martin, I just wanted to ask about that idea of the mentality, because being in the stadium, was it the raucous Bernabeu that we know? And obviously you saw the reaction to the penalty miss from Saka. How did it feel like, though, that Arsenal gradually wore them down a little bit in terms of their expectations that we are Madrid and we are going to come and we are going to make this comeback?
With more than 40 years of experience of going to football matches and writing about football matches, I managed to turn up at exactly the same time as the Real Madrid team bus, as I always somehow managed to do. So I spent a delightful half an hour where you just couldn't move. I mean, you literally, I'm looking at a set of stairs that I need to go up to get to the where the media centre is, and in the end, I think I got probably within about 20 people of it. There was about 20 rows of people, but between me and the stairs, and then you just couldn't move anymore. And they're waiting for this bus to come in. There was no sign around that stadium that anyone thought that they weren't going to win last night.
Really well.
You know, it's just a complete, you know, look, it helped. You can understand every single word the Arsenal fans are saying. You can't always understand, you know, maybe there were conversations going on around me. People saying, I think we're stuffed. But it didn't seem like that.
Yeah.
It seemed like, you know, yes, we can. That chant, they were chanting, yes, we can. And great big tifo behind the goal of like some sort of godlike figure
playing chess.
That's with there was a red and white chess piece that was over, which
discarded,
is Atletico Madrid.
Yeah.
There was a pale blue one that was Manchester City, and there was a red and white one that was just about to fall, which obviously represented Arsenal. I'm trying to remember from the first.
I wonder what they do with that now.
Burn it, I would have thought.
It's a lot of work, isn't it?
Oh, mate, there's a ridiculous
it was
amount of
huge
work.
as well. Anyway, sorry.
Why don't you just go to the pub like normal
Yeah. Put a shirt on. Get over yourself.
But it was, so the atmosphere was incredible. And I've raved on you about the Bernabeu, the new Bernabeu before, and once you're inside it, it's like.
But that is a
enormous.
huge thing, isn't it, for this Arsenal team, and not just Lewis Skelly and Arteta. But
they haven't just
that's
beaten
what feels like a moment, doesn't it?
Absolutely,
it's not winning a trophy, and we don't want to get carried away. But this is a bit of a moment, isn't it?
And people can say, "Oh, Real Madrid aren't as good as they once were," or whatever. And that is perhaps true. There is a feeling that this is end of an era, that you know, with Ancelotti, and he will, I would have thought almost certainly, not be there next season. There's a possibility, great possibility, that Vinicius Junior won't be there next season if he takes this offer from Saudi Arabia, which is beyond insane, really.
Yeah.
So there is a feeling of an end of an era. But you can't take away from Arsenal. They haven't just beaten any old team. They have beaten a team that haven't been knocked out at the quarter-final stage of a Champions League tournament since 2003.
Yeah.
You know, they find.
That's amazing, isn't it?
They find a way to. They find ways to get through.
They bloody find a way to win.
They find a way to win.
I'm sick of it, and
That's
they've
what
not
they
done
do.
it anymore.
And they've not done it. And so, you know, there's really, really good teams have gone there. Very, very good teams that we've rated enormously have gone there. And, you know, teams that have done quite remarkable things, actually. I know Tottenham are not people's idea of a club of great achievement, but it was the Tottenham team that destroyed Maicon's career, and Gareth Bale and all of that went to Real Madrid, with people think they'd already knocked out AC Milan. They had that amazing result against Inter Milan, an amazing performance, and then went to Real Madrid and got a man sent off after 10 minutes and beaten 4-0, and that was it. It was all over. You know, we've had Man City go there. We've had a good Chelsea team go there.
Yeah.
No one's done it.
Yeah.
No one's done it.
This feel like the moment to me, it kind of felt like in a Champions League context, like the moments when Arteta finally beat Pep and Manchester City. You know, that incremental of you're watching this team grow. It does feel like that, and it felt quite satisfying for me in this age of constantly changing managers, and we're recording this on a Thursday night when you've got Ange Postecoglou and Ruben Amorim up backs against the wall.
Yeah.
It felt a reward for the Arsenal hierarchy and club to kind of have backed Arteta and this project that's been going, that you see these incremental steps. They beat Pep and Manchester City. They didn't win the title, of course, but this felt like a moment like that. Gregor, would you agree with where they've gone up a notch now in terms of their stature, standing? Like Martin said, would you agree with Martin that PSG will be, you know, thinking this is going to be a proper test?
Yeah, don't forget that Arsenal beat them 2-0 in the group
Absolutely,
stage. So, yeah, I think it is. I mean, you cannot overstate how crucial it was to have Bukayo Saka back.
Yes.
Like, I would almost go as far as to say this, that it wouldn't have been the same. It wouldn't have been...
Yeah. Even with that dreadful penalty.
It was a dreadful penalty.
Oh God, we have to acknowledge it. We were all so upset.
He just draws like defenders towards him,
Yeah.
opponents towards him. He elicits fear and anxiety in the opposition. Alaba smashed them in the first
third
10
minute.
minutes. Was it third minute?
Third minute he gets a booking.
Absolutely smashed them, yeah. And you could see Alaba's face after that was kind of. He looked at his teammate. The camera cut to him, and he was like, "Yeah, come on." He was like, "Vamos." And I wasn't buying it. It wasn't a reducer. It was like I'm a bit scared of this guy. I'm a bit scared of this guy.
Totally.
So, and Saka just gets. He's so strong. That's one of the things that he's like. It's probably a bit underrated about him. He's so resilient and he gets booted all over the place. He just gets back up. And he wants the ball again. So that happened throughout both legs, and he kept going at him, and he was outstanding. I mean, I know the penalty was crazy, but
a lovely finish though. I actually love that he went for a really crap chipped Panenka penalty and then scored with a little dink over the keeper.
Yeah.
I got it right this time. But
it was a terrible penalty.
It was awful. It was
one of the worst. It wasn't even a proper Panenka.
No.
It wasn't down the middle. It was actually off to the side slightly. And so once the goalkeeper hasn't gone the wrong way, you're stuffed. Bad. It was an absolute toss of a coin, that, because you're thinking if he guesses the right way, if you don't hit a Panenka down the middle. The whole point of the Panenka is you hit it down the middle. So if he goes left, he's stuffed. If he goes right, he's stuffed. If you get it right. But to hit it slightly to the side gives the guy a 50-50 chance. If he guesses right, he's going to save it because you haven't put any real power on it. And the thing is, he usually puts a bit of
whip on
poke on it. Yeah, absolutely.
Next time, go Bukayo. Whack it next time. Whack it next time.
It might not be a next time.
Yes. Greg, are you talking about Bukayo Saka? Obviously huge over these both legs, but Declan Rice, in terms of, again, standing and how he's viewed, the rest of Europe will be going, Declan Rice is one of the best midfielders in Europe, isn't he? Now, after these 2 games? If he wasn't before already?
Yeah, I think probably the view of Declan Rice has gone up several notches across Europe. Just the amount of ground he covers is extraordinary.
As an athlete, as much as a good footballer, unbelievable to watch.
Yeah, I think they call him the horse, don't they? And within the changing room, and you can see why the way he gallops around. And he's I was reading he had more touches than any Arsenal player, more accurate passes, most interceptions, joint most tackles, and joint most chances created. He just in both games he was just the dominant figure.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is about him having a bit more freedom. I mean, the defensive stuff he's so good at. You know that he can break up play. You know that he'll track runners. He'll make great recovery runs. He'll press brilliantly. You know he does all that. But having a bit more freedom when Arsenal have the ball, being able to join in or carry it forward, get into the box, make those kind of late runs into the box, it just completely changes his impact on the game. And yeah, he's outstanding.
It's one of those things that, people who saw him every week at West Ham and my brother, for instance, always thought this was the player that, this was Declan Rice, the one that we're seeing now. Always thought
the all-action midfielder.
A lot of people at West Ham were absolutely convinced. That's why the 100 million quid, 105 million quid or whatever, West Ham fans, a lot of West Ham fans, weren't that delighted with that because they thought he was better than that. They thought, and certainly when Caicedo went for more, it was like, what have we done? And I'm so pleased that other people are now seeing what sort of West Ham fans always saw with him, where they looked at this guy and go, this is going to be one of the best players in Europe. This guy really. Is really, and the only thing he didn't have in his game was that he didn't score as many goals as people would have liked. But then again,
he's created the joint most big chances. No, sorry, there's only one player in Europe's Big 5 leagues who've created more big chances as well. So he's a creative force now as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But which he couldn't be at West Ham because they needed him to mind the shop all the time. Yeah. That's what they needed. That's what the Moyes team needed.
Is that a bit of a worry with the first leg with Thomas Partey suspended? A rather stupid yellow card that he booked up.
Yeah, that was the one. Yeah, that was the one negative.
I'll tell you what, we'll get on to I wanted to ask a question on Madrid before we start looking ahead to the next leg. Martin, you talked about Ancelotti and things, but for this team, this is a fairly seismic defeat, isn't it? for them as a club,
Totally.
with a team that includes Mbappe, Bellingham, Vinicius, Rodrigo. That stadium will not have been expecting or accepting going out in the quarterfinals.
It wasn't a you get that white handkerchief thing.
Yeah.
In Spain, and there wasn't that last night. But it cleared pretty damn rapidly, and it was certainly once Martinelli had put the result beyond doubt. It was clearing quite rapidly. No, they're not used to it.
Bad week.
Used to it.
Bad week for Kylian Mbappe as well. Absolutely shocking tackle for a red card at the weekend.
Absolutely.
And then a pretty shocking dive as well for the penalty. Wasn't even a very good dive, I didn't think.
Someone was saying to me
I thought it was pretty good.
No, it was it was too obvious. He jerked himself too much about like a kind of fish out of water. That's what he didn't make it look subtle enough. Yeah.
Someone was saying to me that Real Madrid TV, after the game at the weekend, well, the 2 days of like complete confusion really, and not knowing what they could because they're so used to everything being a terrible injustice when everyone gets sent off or whatever. Yeah. And the Mbappe tackle is so diabolical.
Oh my God.
They've just got no way out. They've got no way. Yeah. They've actually got to say, he deserved it. They can't bring themselves to say they deserve it.
Hasn't he only got like a 1-match ban or something for nearly breaking a bloke's leg? Yeah. Absolutely shocking. Anyway, I said I wanted to come back to Arsenal. They now face PSG, the team of the competition so far, along with Barcelona, but in terms of
Barcelona
narrative, PSG are the ones that have grabbed everyone's attention. Gregor, do we think it's as simplistic as a defence v attack? Obviously, the answer is no, but that's how I'm teeing it up and how a lot of people will be teeing it up, as one of the best defences in Europe against one of the most exciting attacks.
Well, I would argue that PSG have got the best press, so that is defending.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, it's Arsenal are very good at playing like that too. They did particularly in the first leg against Real Madrid.
So it's going to be 7-7 or 0-0.
Well,
both things can be true.
PSG showed in this game, I know we'll come on to it. They showed like a little bit of the kind of fragility that has always been. Has been there in the past. Yeah. We think it'd been swept away. And let's remember, in the group stage, they stunk the place out.
Yeah.
It's been a big turnaround since the turn of the year.
Yeah.
But at the same time, my God, like seeing Barcola and Dembele in the flesh, the speed they are is extraordinary. And actually, both fullbacks. You got to remember both fullbacks. The way they played, both fullbacks when they have the ball at the back, kind of, it's almost a bit like Spurs. They step into midfield, and the 2 wingers drop wide, and they get the ball wide there, and let them run at them. So, undoubtedly, the threat in forward areas is as big as any in Europe. So Arsenal's defence will have to be on top of their game.
It's a very nice way of saying, Tom, I don't agree with you, but I'm going to kind of agree with you at the end. We're going to come on to Aston Villa in just a second. I just wanted to bring some breaking news as we're recording. Virgil van Dijk has agreed a new 2-year deal at Liverpool. Paul Joyce writing a piece of analysis on the website. Joining Mo Salah on a 2-year deal. They're heading into the weekend, Martin, about to be crowned champions at any point. It could be this weekend, depending on how Arsenal's hangover from Real Madrid goes.
Well, that's it.
But this is quite the season for Liverpool, isn't it? And as much as we've known this for a long time, we've said this for a long time, to win the title in the manner that they are going to, and secure 2 of 3 of their players that were out of contract, this is another big moment in terms of what is next for this club as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's. I think that's huge. I think it's good for English football that they've Salah and Van Dijk are both staying. I feel a bit sorry for Liverpool. I could totally understand Van Dijk's sort of prickliness when Michael Owen, said to him, talking about it being a bit of a bitter pill or something like that, a disappointment or whatever, because they've only won the league, and you're like, you don't realise this could have been, for Liverpool, this could have been the year after Ferguson was for Manchester United, or the year after Wenger was for Arsenal. That, nobody had a clue what Liverpool were going to be this season. What they didn't think they would be is champions by about 14 points, which is how it could end up. So I think it's a fantastic achievement. And, they're slowing down a little bit now. I mean, they're still, the results aren't bad, but we can all see the performances are a little bit, But that often happens with teams, and certainly with a team that has been a front runner all season. That by the time they get towards the finishing line, they're puffing a little bit.
Well, if you've not got anyone chasing you as well, you might slow down a little bit, take your foot
absolutely.
off.
But I think it's it's fantastic.
When we've spoken about a rebuild, how strange it is to say a rebuild is needed or is coming for a team who are finishing champions. This makes it easier.
Yeah.
Like holding on to two players of that stature
absolutely.
makes it far easier.
You've now got
to
2 years.
prepare.
You've got 2 years to replace Virgil van Dijk with someone
some planning
similar.
Yeah.
You've got 2 years to replace Mo Salah with a wide forward of similar ability, shall we say? I mean, you're not necessarily going to get good luck. You're not necessarily going to get Mo Salah.
But they've got 2 years to work it out, which is plenty.
But you've got
time.
2 years to alight on somebody that you go, right, well, if we've done our sums right again, this is the guy.
Or sign them and sort of bed them in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, I think and it could happen this weekend because you don't know what Arsenal are going to be at Ipswich.
Yeah.
Ipswich have got everything.
And Ipswich
to
showing
play
a little bit of fight at home.
Ipswich, they've got everything to play for, haven't they, Ipswich?
We could well be talking about the champions being crowned on Monday's show, but yes, as I mentioned.
Which would be good, by the way, because otherwise what's going to happen is they could quite possibly win it FA Cup semi-final weekend. And just for those people that like the FA Cup, that's not good.
We want to give everyone their moment.
We want to give
everyone their
moment. If Nottingham Forest were to knock Man City out and get to the FA Cup final or whatever, it would be, which would be the first time since 91.
Yeah.
91 would be the last time Forest were at the FA Cup final.
You'd know better than me. I was 2.
Yeah, there you go.
It was, says producer Neil,
old,
silently from across the room.
So 91. So first, if Forest were to beat City, obviously if City were to win, it's not quite the special occasion that it maybe would have been. But if Forest were to get a result there, that's the first time they've got to an FA Cup final in 35 years, nearly 35 years. So, I mean, you'd like them to have the stage that day.
Everyone wants
basically.
their moment,
You'd
and they
like
should
them
get
to have
it.
the stage back that day, which they're not going to get if Liverpool win the league. Basically.
Well,
so,
Liverpool might wrap
on
it
that
up
afternoon.
this weekend, and as I mentioned there, Paul Joyce writing about Virgil van Dijk and his new deal. You can read all about it on the Times website. Now we've got plenty more to come on the Champions League. Gregor teased a little bit of analysis about PSG. He was there at Villa Park to watch that game. We're going to talk about it in detail in part 2, but it's time for a break. Martin Samuel back. This is why he flew in, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, absolutely.
For this moment.
The quiz.
He jumped out of his bed in Madrid this morning. I must get back for the quiz. Who am I talking about when I say a former footballer who played for the 2 other semi-finalists, Barcelona and Inter Milan, and also played for Montpellier, Marseille and Manchester United? Find out after the break.
Nikhil Vicaria.
Find out if it is Nikhil after the break. Welcome back to the Game Football Podcast from The Times. I'm Tom Clark and I've got Martin Samuel and Gregor Robertson with me. Both of them in an excellent shout, Martin, for Nikhil. I'm sure he'd be delighted as a listener to get a shout out as the answer to the quiz question. But it wasn't him.
No.
It was Gregor.
Laurent Blanc.
Actually, you didn't get it, did you?
You give me credit now, so.
Actually, Martin got it. Martin gave 2 answers. This is how much he loves the quiz, ladies and gentlemen. Back to Tuesday night and to Villa Park and Gregor Robertson, part 2 of this perfect duo who were at both the Champions League games. Cracking game, wasn't it, Gregor? Oh,
epic.
Oh, what a bonkers game.
Truly bonkers, yeah. I mean,
you must have been a bit disappointed, like 20 minutes in, thinking, oh, God.
Yeah.
It's all over. Because you needed those goals in reverse, really, didn't you?
It was almost more than that. There was a period in the middle. Villa started quite well. Then there was a period in the middle of the half, like a chunk in the middle, where it was like, I thought this could get embarrassing. It was like they were toying with them. Villa were like statues. They didn't even really want to press them or like really engage until they got in their half. And then they started getting deeper and still not engaging. And like, so they were just knocking the ball around them. And it was like, well, this team's good. But then Tielemans swept the finish in, and there was hope. And there was a great atmosphere before kickoff too. There was hope
They had
Absolutely.
They had a big flag thing, didn't they?
Yeah, brilliant.
yeah.
Brilliant.
Is that now a prerequisite? If you get to like this stage in the Champions League, do you have to have a big flag?
I think we're copying, aren't we? We're copying the fact that
copying like Dortmund and people, aren't we? They've done it.
They've done it for.
There was a fireworks display and everything. It was mental. Yeah, it was good. It was good.
Yeah.
It wasn't like this is too much. It
Spot
was like,
the bloke who's used to me sending him to Ipswich and Brighton and places. That's Look at these fireworks!
No,
wow.
but there's still a sense of wonder about Villa being here.
Yes,
That's the whole point.
that
Like
is
it's
absolutely
43 years, I think, since they were
And
last on
that's
this
what's been
stage.
so great about it.
Yeah.
That has been so great. My favourite moment of the Champions League this season is the fact that it wasn't just for a brief period, it was for quite a few games actually, Aston Villa fans could sing "We are top of the league,"
Yeah,
and there was
Champions
a proper
League, we're top of the league. Yeah.
There was a proper league table,
And
they were top of
deservedly
it.
so.
And
Deservedly so.
yeah.
And then just in terms of just mapping out that atmosphere, as we've talked about that. So when the McGinn goal goes in, everyone celebrates. Did you jump up? I'm just checking. Did you keep your,
There might have been a thrust of the fist.
president of the John McGinn fan club? I just wanted to check. Did you keep your kind of loyalties?
I
in?
mean, I was really happy. Yeah.
You're allowed to be really happy.
Yeah.
You're
But
not allowed to jump up.
But
and
John,
Yeah.
leaving the way he was just like scuttling up the pitch through the
He's off
ploughing a lone furrow
Yeah.
through the middle of the
Yeah,
pitch,
yeah.
and like just looking around him. No one was coming. He just kept going, and then he thought, "Bugger it, I'm going for it."
Yeah. And then Marcus
And then-
Rashford. I did say on Monday, didn't I? I thought about a little Marcus Rashford
had
would
a
be
funny
involved.
game because the first half he was I'd say he was poor. He tried. He lost possession a lot of times when he was trying to beat players. He was trying to do things in fairness, and it wasn't happening for him. Lost the ball in the build-up to the first goal. Although a lot happened. But in the second half, just like Villa, he kind of reflected the
I was
improvement.
surprised they took him off, Gregor. Was you surprised?
I
they
was,
took him
yeah.
off?
I was surprised they
Because
took
I
McGinn
thought,
off.
Because I thought he was causing them a lot of trouble.
That was the one thing I thought. I wondered whether Unai Emery got the subs right. I half wondered whether you just throw one of the defenders on up front and just lump it long, because that's how Liverpool got a goal against them, was by going long against Marquinhos and people. But I mean, not the most sophisticated idea. But I just felt like you had this all built up 3-2. Oh my God, get another one. Oh my God. And I couldn't tell whether it was PSG game management and a bit more big game experience, or whether Villa they had some chances, of course, but which of those two camps do you think it was? Or are you going to say both things can be true?
No, I think when the third went in, because it was 2 goals in 2 or 3 minutes.
2 minutes, yeah.
And then they had another chance with Tielemans' header. It was when it was like the ball didn't have enough power on it, enough sort of movement on it.
It looked like it was
generate
going
any
in.
power,
Just
do you know what I
properly
mean?
get it. Yeah,
so he
yeah,
tried to
yeah.
lob, and Donnarumma clawed it out. And there was a moment then when Marquinhos lost the plot. He was waving his arms wildly and like screaming at his teammates and saying, clearly liven the hell up, and like even the away end was in the corner, and he went across to them and started doing that and lifting his arms.
Right.
He recognised that they were in real danger of another. Like,
Not again.
Yeah,
I
one
think
of them.
because when you look at this team, they haven't got too many players that survive from that. From the
remontada,
the 6-1 against Barcelona. And I was watching the game and I was thinking about him, and I'm thinking he remembers that.
Absolutely,
he remembers that, and you could almost see it happening again. They're 5-1 up on aggregate at one stage.
So
it's done.
So there was a recognition clearly at that point, and but you still have to say they still had 3 glorious chances. Asensio came on, had that chance, 1v1. Consos, my God, that's got to haunt him. It was a great ball in by Rashford, like one of those balls that's almost undefendable, and all he just had to do was contact it, and he sort of, one of them where his shoulders go up and his head kind of comes in. Oh, that was a real heart and mouth moment. And then Maatsen at the end, it might have snuck in, but it was close.
Yeah.
So Mark and I were talking before. The thing you have to say is that Villa still had 33 minutes to find that last goal, and they had.
Well, that's what I was wondering, whether in there, did you think it was the Marquinhos thing more, the game management, or just maybe Villa? It was brilliant, it was spirited, it was fantastic, but that actually this is as far as...
I mean, if you create 3 glorious chances to get the leveller in that last 30 minutes against what we're saying before the game was the best team in Europe, you've got to say you couldn't have done any more. I mean, the player said as much afterwards. We couldn't have done any more, except Konza could have stuck his head out. So I kind of agree. I feel that Rashford was having a real effect in the second half. His weaving run for the counter goal was brilliant,
fantastic,
outstanding. And he just had that. He looked like Marcus Rashford of old. Yeah. Like we've not seen it. We've seen flashes of it, and even this was a kind of a flash, and it was like a half an hour period in the second half. But he was in his flow, and McGinn was a real driving force. But Emery does now have like quite a lot of options, and he does feel like you have to say before the game too. If you did a poll of Villa fans, most would have wanted Watkins to start. Yeah. So Watkins, England fans know this as well as anyone. Watkins can be a kind of difference maker. It just didn't quite happen. So I can understand the logic in making some changes, but it was a bit surprising to see McGinn and Rashford come off.
Yeah, I do think there is something. I think we talked about this last week. I do think there is something about English football clubs and their refusal to accept defeat that absolutely puzzles, mystifies. Some of the foreign clubs. It really does, because PSG are thinking at 5-1, 5-1 in aggregate, we've got this. Yeah. And yet, Aston Villa, the crowd, are refusing to believe they're out of it, when really PSG must play an awful lot of games where if you get to a 5-1 margin,
or a 2-0 margin,
all the other lot want to do is just make sure they don't get beat 10-1, and they're very happy for everyone to sort of shake hands. Liam Brady, I think, used to say about Italy that, if it was 1-1 with about 10 minutes to go, you could literally sort of see players around you, like looking at each other and looking at the opposition and, deciding, right, shall we, everyone happy here? And that's
what are you doing after?
Yeah, exactly. That's what it's going to be. So I do think there is something quite marvellous, really. And we've said it about Real Madrid, so it's not solely an English thing, but there is something quite marvellous about this idea that English clubs don't know when they're beaten, and they refuse to admit that they're beaten. Even more so in the modern era, when English clubs are just made up of foreign players. So quite how... are made up of a lot of foreign players. So quite how you get these hammer and we talk about, it was a typical English game, and you look at the 22 names and you'll go, there's 4 English fellas on the pitch. How is,
Blood and thunder.
How is this football? There's 18. Half of these people from Brazil. It's like it's a strange thing. I don't know what it is.
Maybe that's part of the atmosphere,
culture.
The culture. The fans culture does seep into your psyche.
Absolutely.
Perhaps does make you think
Aston
about that.
Aston Villa didn't think they were beaten. Yeah. And maybe that causes problems for PSG as well, because PSG don't know what to do.
Psychology was a big part of all these quarterfinals. If you look at the Barca game as well.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to know how to really approach these games.
Absolutely.
And, clearly once you go 5-1 up, you think you're home and dry.
Yeah.
But also, as Enrique sort of said afterwards, what that the consequence of that was complete shackles off for Villa. And I'm sure the halftime team talk was like, lads, you've got absolutely nothing to lose now. Just go hell for leather. And they did it. So I think the psychology was quite important. And then again, once they come back, it's like you could see, as I say, that moment on the hour mark, Paris Saint-Germain just sort of recognising that they were in real trouble. And Enrique said it, like, we will not forget this game in a long time. Yeah.
And in terms of, you briefly mentioned it in the first half of the show, and I kind of cut you off, so I wanted to come back to it. Throwing it forward then, we've seen PSG a lot now. We've seen them against Liverpool twice, 2 really good games, kind of similar to the Villa games, but with far fewer goals, of course. And then now we're seeing them against Aston Villa. What do you think Arsenal will be? Will they have taken more from this Villa game, perhaps, in terms of the fact that Villa were able to cause them potentially more problems than Liverpool did slightly?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think it's pretty remarkable watching them, how many players they commit, like, up the pitch. They keep high up the pitch, even when there was a 1-goal margin left. They still press high. They don't really ever retreat too much and try to say, right, come on lads, let's hold on for this. They think the best form of defence is doing it high up the pitch.
Yeah.
So that clearly leaves space for Arsenal to exploit, and any team who can try and play through them. It's no mean feat, because they usually push one full-back up to join in with the front three and midfielder supporting them, so it's like they really go all out, like full press. And
Nuno Mendes against Bukayo Saka could be a tasty little
but I think he's great. He is a great player, and he shackled Salah. But I think I saw the Barcelona game last year, and Lamine Yamal gave him a torrid time, and Morgan Rogers, over both ties, had moments. He had moments where he beat him, and I think I would back Saka. So, but what you have to say is those guys as attacking threats too are extraordinary. As I said earlier, the way they build up play is there's some sort of similarities to Tottenham. It's just a bit more vertical and dynamic.
Yeah.
It's like if they don't play it to Barcola, they'll play a long pass, but it's not like a long ball, a long pass back and then through again.
Yeah.
It's like it's very incisive stuff. They are a bit different to anyone else in Europe, I think, and they can also just do that thing of monopolising possession. There were moments, as I say, in the first half where they were just knocking the ball around and toying with Villa, and I thought this could get really embarrassing. But Villa, to their credit, mustered some performance in the second half.
I get the feeling as well. It's quite interesting that, speaking of people at the game last night, Arsenal, I don't think are unhappy that they don't have to face Unai Emery in the semi-final and Aston Villa in the semi-final. I mean, as good as PSG are, I think there was a little bit of, Unai Emery turning up with a point to prove.
Yes, which he's done already. He basically denied them the title last season.
Absolutely. And that they'll settle for PSG.
Yeah.
They've already beaten PSG, and they'll settle for PSG. Yeah. Whereas, and also, if they weren't to beat PSG, it would be a massive disappointment. Obviously, it would. But everyone acknowledges that PSG are one of the great European teams. If you manage to get knocked out in the Champions League semi-final by Aston Villa, you've got a lot. You lose the brownie points from the Bernabeu. You lose reputationally, you lose the bounce from the Real Madrid game by losing to Aston Villa. So I don't think Arsenal are unhappy.
No, interesting
that it's PSG rather than Villa.
And it's a great set of semi-finals, isn't it?
Spread around Europe.
Barcelona, Inter Milan, Arsenal, PSG, one from each nation. Great kits. It's all just really tapping into my
great kits.
It was. There's something about as a kid who grew up in the 90s of like these four.
You're gonna get me on my hobby horse. They never look like themselves.
The third kit.
They never look like themselves. No, Arsenal couldn't. Sorry,
Inter do.
Yeah.
Inter's a great kit. Inter's.
It's all right when you say it. Yeah.
No. But Inter's just a great kit.
Completely iconic. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Anyone want to offer a prediction on who's going to win?
I thought you were going to say anyone want to offer a better kit than Milan.
We can do that as well. If you want.
Gremio.
Yeah. Also very good.
Pale blue, white, and black. Yeah. Tricolor stripes, which seems to be a Brazilian thing.
Yeah.
Fluminense. Fluminense are green, white, and claret.
Claret. Beautiful.
And Sao Paulo have been red, white, and black stripes.
Yeah.
They alternate. I love it. But Gremio's one, pale blue, white, and black.
But who's going to win the Champions League?
Gremio.
Do we think it's PSG or is it Barcelona just quietly lurking on this other side of the draw?
I don't think they're quiet. I don't think there's anything quiet about Barcelona.
Quiet in the sense that for us, as the English media, English fans, as I've mentioned, we've all engaged with PSG and we're all obsessed with PSG now.
Because they're on our side of the
Because we've
draw.
seen them, that's what I meant. So Barcelona on the other side.
On this sort of...
they're quite good. They've won 4-1 again.
Watch the highlights,
I wouldn't write off Inter. I think they're different too.
Yeah.
They play with a back three, which is practically unheard of now across the rest of the tournament. They play two up front.
Yeah.
They also stretch the play sort of vertically quite interestingly. Like the defenders sit really deep to try and draw people. I know that that's quite commonplace now, but they really do try and do that and play back and forward and through as well. And they're really good at set plays.
They were in the Champions League final 2 years ago, so they can't be.
Inzaghi's it's
not a fluke.
Yeah.
No. It's not a fluke, is it? You know.
Inzaghi's a really smart manager. They're good defensively. I think I wouldn't write them off at all. And Barcelona, another side of it, play like the highest line in Europe, really, and so they're another quite kind of gung ho. But just their front three, like the thing about both PSG and Barcelona is their front threes are just absolutely thrilling, and you think if they really, really turn it on, there's nothing anyone can do about it.
And I'm glad into an one. Unfortunate for Harry Kane. I'd like to see Harry Kane and Eric Dyer's there.
Yeah,
you know. So
big Michael Elise as well.
Pulling
strings.
I'd like
in
I'd like to see the English players, but particularly Kane, obviously, do well. But at the same time, I am so opposed to a team in the Champions League getting a home final. I think it is absolutely outrageous, and it would have been the second time Bayern Munich had it, because they had it against Chelsea, and people can say what they like about it's like a neutral venue. No, it isn't. No. I was there for Chelsea versus Bayern Munich. It was like a home game. You got the feeling people were sitting in the same seats they'd been in all year. You know, the whole pre-match stuff, the stadium announcer. You know, there was little bits, sops to Chelsea, but the whole thing was about Bayern Munich. And they were very, very close to getting it again. And I just think it's outrageous. And I don't think it should be beyond the wit of the finest minds in tournament organisation to, in July, look at who is in the tournament and go, right, okay,
let's pick another big stadium somewhere.
You could have just picked
Tottenham
off the top of your head. Tottenham, Wembley.
No, it's a great stadium. I wasn't a dig at Tottenham. That was because it's a great stadium.
But it's a great stadium.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that you've got to keep it out of the city.
Yeah.
But not a home ground.
Yeah.
So and people go, well, that would mean the Bernabeu never had a Champions League final. You go, well, so what? Yeah. So what? That's the trade. You get to support Real Madrid. They win everything. They buy Kylian Mbappe if they feel like it, etc., etc.
Yeah.
Your trade is you don't get to host the Champions League final unless you've had a disastrous season and you're not in the tournament. It doesn't go to It doesn't go to the Alliance Arena.
Yeah.
I feel really, really strongly about it.
Great. It's good. Thank God they're not through. Thank God for that.
Thank God for Inter Milan. I would be chewing the furniture.
Thank God for Inter Milan.
Even more than usual.
Great team, great kit, and they've got a great challenge against Barcelona in the next round. Speaking of iconic kits, let's finish with a quick mention for Newcastle United. Gregor, I was listening back to the show.
Don't play in black and white stripes anywhere near as much as they should. Just so I'd add that.
That's important. That is the most important thing I'm going to mention about Newcastle United.
No, it's not the most important thing, but it's an important thing. You've waited all this time.
Shall we do?
You've waited all this time to be one of the most successful clubs in the country. They're getting there.
Yeah.
You should look like Newcastle.
Yeah. I'm excited for the post-season special about kits, which we will do. I promise. I think we should do it. About favourite kits.
I'm up for that, mate.
But for now, I've just got a quick question about Newcastle.
Just keep talking about football.
Greg, shockingly, for the Game Football podcast, the Game Style podcast is coming in the summer, ladies and gentlemen. Greg, I realised listening back on Monday that I said, we'll get to the bit about Newcastle being good against Manchester United, and we didn't. We just booted Man United and Tottenham for half an hour. Another big win for Newcastle, 5-0 against Crystal Palace, up to third. I don't want to get into too much about who's going to finish in the European places because that's all we've got to talk about for the rest of the season. What I wanted to ask you both is, and we've touched on Newcastle having so many talented players that a lot of other teams would take. If they can keep them together and add a few more, do we think they could be title contenders next season? Martin?
Yes, undoubtedly.
Yeah?
Undoubtedly. It's one of the best midfields in the country. It's one of the best midfields in the country. Centre forward is sensational. Eddie Howe has confounded everyone's expectation because they said he didn't know how to organise a defence, and it turns out he does. They've got very good young fullbacks coming through, and they can make some upgrades. And they've handled the financial aspects of it very well. They can make some upgrades. They can improve in areas. Undoubtedly, they're third in the league.
Yeah.
They're third, and
Third, 2 points ahead of Nottingham Forest. Starting to think Newcastle are the certainties as much as there can be. 6 games to go. Lots can happen, of course, but they're on an unbelievable run with that Carabao Cup final win. You start to think no one's going to want to play.
Well, the Carabao Cup, when people talk about it being a distraction and it's meaningless, they've drawn such strength.
Well, that's partly why I thought about next season. They've got that whole monkey off the bat. Oh, they've not won a trophy for years. They've done it now.
My only hesitation is the same thing that happened to them the last time they made the Champions League.
Right.
You can improve your team.
Sack it off.
Can you improve your team and your squad to the extent that you can cope with playing in that? In what is now, 8 guaranteed games in the Champions League now? Probably more.
We started off this show
because you have
by
to be
saying
really bad to not get through.
It's either or, though. Liverpool win the title, and maybe next season they should all sit down and decide what they're going for. Like 3, if we're going to have 19 teams in the Champions League. Remember,
he used to write to me.
Still do.
He used to write to me. He used to write to me.
Me.
Seriously, he used to write to me
my
and
dad.
say, "That this is all sorted out."
It's a fix.
And you're looking at it going, mate. How many people would you have to square off? It's like the moon landings when they go, the moon landings were fake. And you go, okay, then who did the carpentry? if we're building stages of the moon or whatever, someone's got the paint job, haven't they? Have you ever thought that? Have you ever wondered how Batman ever kept his identity secret? Bearing in mind,
let's not start talking about Batman. We'll be here for ages.
He's built an entire cave. There's got to be someone out there. Who's going, yeah, we have this really, we have this job. And
so anyway, Newcastle can win the league.
Maybe they're 6 feet under,
Martin. It was full of bats, and then there was lifts and stuff like that. I think the bloke
fade out
who ordered that job. I think the bloke who ordered that job. I think that's Batman.
Right, so Batman landed on the moon. Anyway, Gregor.
He keeps dragging it back to football.
We're going to have the off-season special about all these things, I promise. Where do they need to improve Newcastle? Martin said with a few additions, and Martin listed the strong area. Do we think a good centre-back at least?
Good centre-back, although they are very good defensively, but yeah, a good centre-back, a right winger. Although Murphy is obviously in the form of his life. They've tried for a while to get a right winger.
He can jog on, Murphy. He's broken my heart with fantasy football throughout the season. Okay. He can get gone. I've had enough of it.
You're better off just not bothering, Tom.
Just like you.
They're fixed with Barnes and Gordon on the left. Good luck being a backup to Isak. But they probably will have to.
Yeah.
So,
they've got to get a backup to Isak because Callum Wilson isn't.
He'll move on. Yeah,
isn't fit.
I think he'll probably move on.
Liam Delap for 30 million quid could be a decent backup from Ipswich.
I tell you what, this is an interesting thing with Liam Delap. Because you thought I was going to say something, about Batman
I had
or
absolutely
whatever.
no idea what
I
you
was
were
going to
say.
But it's an interesting thing with Liam Delap. One of the things that he's got to be careful of, £30 million isn't that much. Someone could buy Liam Delap and just
stick him on the bench.
Which is what I was suggesting. He's your backup to Isak.
Yeah, but that's no good for. But that's no good for Liam Delap.
Right.
He's got to pick his club really carefully because there is the temptation is go to the biggest club that want you.
Yeah.
But actually,
the
biggest club that want you, 30 million quid is what they pay for reserves. That's not what they pay for their first choice. A lot of them. So he's got a very interesting decision to make, Liam Delap, because you'd almost be better, or potentially you might be better, going another stepping stone.
Nottingham Forest. Anyway, sorry, go on, Greg.
But basically, the point stands, and I think if you look at Aston Villa this season, they struggled for a large part of the season. Now they've given themselves a chance. I'm still not sure. They've got Newcastle and City next.
Yeah.
If they don't win them, they're in trouble, or one of them at least.
Yeah.
So this is what happens. It's so hard to break. Once you break in, that's hard, but then staying there and competing on all fronts is ridiculously hard. So that would still be my hesitation, because they can't spend anything.
Yeah,
they can't spend all the money they have.
Yeah.
They still are going to have to work within a framework.
That is the challenge ahead for Newcastle, but exciting times for their fans. Martin Samuel and Gregor Robertson, thank you very much for joining me. Moon Landings, Batman, and a bit of football thrown in as well. An absolutely cracker of an episode. We'll be back on Monday. We'll see you then.